Taking away women's right to vote is a terrible idea. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the second video in my series in Debunking Red Pill Extremism. Today, I'm going to examine the claim made by some Red Pill extremists that women should not be allowed to vote. This is not a fringe belief. If it was, it could be safely ignored, but I've seen this idea propagated by many prominent Red Pill YouTubers, and it's always met enthusiastically by their audiences. The main video that I used to familiarize myself with the arguments in favor of taking away women's right to vote had over 60,000 views. That's a lot of people watching, and it means that what seems self-evident to me, that this is a terrible idea, is not so obvious to others, so it's necessary to engage with this idea and do some debunking. To start with, I'm going to attempt a steel man and do my best to summarize the arguments that I've seen pushed in favor of taking away women's right to vote. If you want to hear the arguments made by the people themselves, I won't provide any links, but a quick search on YouTube should give you all the results that you need. The main thrust of the arguments that I've seen center around this idea that somebody's rights should be commensurate with their responsibilities. More responsibilities equals more rights. Think of a teenage kid who's allowed to borrow their parents' car, but only after they clean their room and finish their homework. In this thinking, rights are like privileges, like the privilege of borrowing the car, and you can only access those privileges, or those rights, after you've completed your responsibilities. So, if you don't clean your room or do your homework, then your privilege of using the car, or your right, has been revoked, because you haven't fulfilled your responsibilities. With this model in mind, some people are making the case that because women don't have as many responsibilities as men, they shouldn't be allowed to have the privilege or the right to vote. The two main responsibilities that they point to are military service and taxation. Even though some women do serve in the armed forces, for the most part, it's in medical or administrative roles, and they point out that the number of women who are actually serving in the front lines and putting themselves in real danger is very small. Though we don't have this in Australia, in the United States, in order to be able to vote, men have to sign up for the military draft, and women don't. And so the argument goes that if men are shouldering the responsibilities for military service and women aren't, then why should they enjoy the same rights that men do? When it comes to taxation, the argument goes that the responsibility for keeping a nation going via tax revenue is funded primarily by men. This is all backed by data and statistics, and while the US government doesn't publish this kind of thing anymore, the main video that I've been referencing points back to 1998, where the statistics show that over 70% of all tax revenue was collected from men. Therefore, why should women, who are contributing less than half of what men do in the form of tax revenue, still enjoy the same rights? After all, they're contributing far less. This argument is usually followed up by pointing to factually accurate statistics which show that women consume far more of the government's resources, particularly welfare, than men do. There were statistics included in the video that demonstrated that women consume welfare at twice the rate of men. And so the argument goes that when they contribute less than half of the tax revenue and consume twice the welfare, why should women get the right to vote? They will point to statistics, again, all accurate, that demonstrate that since women were given the right to vote, there's been huge increases in government spending and welfare. I saw one study that was referenced that demonstrated that after women were given the right to vote, spending on social welfare increased by 28%. Now, they explain this phenomenon by pointing out that in a democracy, people will always vote according to their selfish interests. She doesn't contribute, and she will always vote to take more and more money away from men in order to redistribute it towards herself. Is that the kind of person who deserves to vote? So there you have it. Those are the main arguments that I've seen to try and justify why women should not be allowed to vote. I've done my best to summarize it and give the steelman argument, but again, if you'd like to hear the arguments for themselves, a simple search on YouTube should give you all the results that you need. Now, having heard all of that, you might be thinking that this sounds quite reasonable. There's a certain logical consistency to it. The current system certainly seems to be unfair to men. Maybe this is worth discussing. If that's what you're thinking, then you're not alone. Like I said, this view is popular, and I see many people in the Red Pill community thinking that this is a good idea. That's why I wanted to address it. Personally, I think this idea of removing women's right to vote is harmful to the men who believe it and dangerous to society as a whole. Let's get to the debunking. Okay, so let's start with an easy one, the military draft. I think it is completely disgraceful that men should have to sign up for the military draft in order to be able to vote, and women do not. I think it's ridiculous, I think it's unfair, and it's blatantly sexist to have this kind of a double standard enshrined in the law. However, when it comes to fixing this problem, there are many solutions that are a lot more straightforward than removing women's right to vote. Option 1. Make women sign up for the draft before they can vote. Now it's equal. Problem solved. Or option 2, make it so that men don't have to sign up for the draft before they can vote. Problem solved. In either of those options, men no longer have a responsibility that women don't, and so it's absolutely fine for them to have equal rights. But let's look at this broader argument that says that having rights should be commensurate with your responsibilities. As an idea, that's absolutely fine, and when these guys talk about it, it sounds reasonable on the surface. But if you actually take a moment and stop and consider what they're saying, you realize that there's no consistency in their argument. Their motive is to not make voting rights commensurate with responsibility. That's just an ideological justification that they're using. What they want to do is specifically target women. If they wanted to apply this idea of making rights commensurate with responsibilities with any kind of ideological consistency, then why would they stop at just removing the right of women to vote? Why not give everybody a number of votes equal to the amount of tax revenue that they contributed? Perhaps with a special bonus if you served in the military. Well, it's not difficult to see how that sort of scenario would play out. All of the rich people in society would band together, creating an oligarchy, and then they'd pass laws to protect their privileged position at the expense of low-income people. But that's not what's being proposed, because ultimately this idea that you should take away women's right to vote is not based on any coherent ideology. So why should women not be able to vote? Because women on the whole consume more welfare? Well, what about the individual woman who doesn't consume any welfare? Why should she be denied the right to vote? Because women on the whole don't pay as many taxes? Well, what about the individual woman who pays lots of taxes? Why should she be denied the right to vote? Because women are more inclined towards socialism? Because women aren't as intelligent as men on the high ends of the spectrum? Because women have a care-based morality system? But what about the intelligent woman who votes libertarian and who has a justice-based morality system? How is it fair that she's denied the right to vote? It's one of those bizarre blind spots that red pill extremists have that's so obvious to outsiders that you can hardly believe that they're not aware of their own cognitive dissonance. Look at this quote from the video that I'm referencing. If you disagree with identity politics and you want a system that's more objective, that looks at the fact and judges people on individuals, not what group they belong to or how sad they are, you know how many crocodile tears they are shedding, but actually the facts of the case, then you should not be in favor of women voting. It just boggles the mind that somebody can, in one sentence, claim to be against identity politics and for individualism, while in the same breath saying that women, all women, no matter the individual circumstances, beliefs, or contributions, should be denied the right to vote. Arguing that all women should be denied the right to vote is identity politics. It is legally discriminating against somebody based on their immutable characteristics. This goes against the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I wonder what it would take to change the mind of one of these red pill extremists. Like, if they were standing face to face with an intelligent, rational woman who meets all of their criteria, no matter how ridiculous they are, if they met a woman like that, would they still stand across from her and say, you shouldn't be allowed to vote because you are accountable for the actions of other individuals? Now, as a man in Western society, you are discriminated against in a number of areas for no other reason other than the fact that you're a man. Things like paternity, child custody, divorce laws, having to sign up for the draft, false rape allegations, false domestic violence allegations. The discrimination that men face in Western society based on their immutable characteristics is a perversion of justice. I think all red pill men can agree on that. But denying women the right to vote based on their immutable characteristics is also a perversion of justice. Yet this hypocrisy is lost on red pill extremists, and later on I'm going to explain why. First, I want to explain why taking away the right of women to vote is extremely dangerous for men. In the West, our governments have the power of legislation, backed up by physical force from the army and the police. So what is it that stops a government from becoming tyrannical and enslaving its citizens? Human rights. What's so fantastic about a country like the United States is that their rights are enshrined and protected by the highest law of the land, the US Constitution. You've got your rights to free speech, free assembly, free practicing of religion, the right to bear arms, the right to vote, amongst many others. What these rights are, in essence, are protections, defenses against the government. When you have a right codified in the Constitution, it means that the government cannot pass any legislation that infringes upon that right. Most people aren't aware of the term democide, which is a shame because it's a very important term to become familiar with. It refers to when a government murders their own citizens. In the last century, over 262 million people were victims of democide. We know the examples of Communist China, Soviet Russia, Nazi Germany, but there were many other examples as well. What this means is that in the last century, you were 6 times more likely to be murdered by your own government than you were to be victim of a war with a foreign power. For anybody interested in further reading about democide and wanting to educate themselves, I'll put some links in the description box below. Now, if there is any lasting lesson that we should have learned from the horrors of the 20th century, it's that we need to be protecting human rights and limiting the power of government. You might be thinking, well, I don't mind if they take women's rights away. I'm a man, it doesn't affect me. That sort of thinking is extremely short-sighted. If they strip a woman of her rights for something as arbitrary as her 2 X chromosomes, who's to say that they won't think of some equally arbitrary reason to strip away your rights? I am always concerned about citizens losing their rights and government excesses of power because the consequences can be so severe. Sure, today it might just be women's right to vote that's taken away, but once you start playing that game, it's a short path to other rights being taken away, and the barrel of the gun soon pointing directly at you. The danger is that once the precedent has been set, there's nothing to stop new groups from coming to power and repeating the game with a new cycle of oppressors and victims. If you want your rights as an individual protected, then stand up for the rights of all individuals. Don't fall victim to the simple logic of, well, this doesn't affect me, so why should I care? The underlying principle of removing women's rights can easily be turned on you. For those who need the reminder, I'm going to read the poem by Martin Niemöller, who lived in Nazi Germany. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Beyond the moral questions concerning rights and responsibilities, there are many other practical ways to address the problems that are pointed out by the Red Pill extremists. You could vote libertarian, lobby to reduce taxation and end welfare payments. That kind of action directly addresses the problems that you perceive them. It attacks it directly, and it makes any attempt to solve these problems by taking away women's right to vote seem like a very roundabout way of achieving your goal. Now, for those who would say that it's unrealistic to expect a libertarian party to ever receive a majority of votes in government, I would agree with you, but ask yourself, how likely is it really that you're able to get women's right to vote taken away? Now, another potential solution is making changes that says that if you're on government welfare, man or woman, then you don't get to vote. Or perhaps you need to have contributed a certain amount of tax revenue to the country before you're allowed to vote. Now, I'm personally not in favor of either of these proposals, but at least they're ideologically consistent, and the opportunity to vote is open to everybody. There's no discrimination based on immutable characteristics. And just to clarify, the reason that I'm not in favor of those proposals is because I think they focus too much on the financial aspect. There's many ways to contribute to society in ways that aren't financial. For example, raising children is an essential task in our society, but it's not exactly profitable. But I don't think the fact that mothers or fathers, whoever the primary caregiver is, the fact that they're not paying taxes should mean that they're not able to vote. As another example, where I live, our ambulance services are run by volunteers, and they don't get paid, which means they don't pay tax money. But I think you'd be hard-pressed to make the case that says that they shouldn't be allowed to vote because they're contributing nothing to society. As a quick side note, one thing I am in favor of is limiting the right to vote to people who demonstrate that they know and understand what they're voting for. In other words, they need to pass some kind of simple aptitude test that demonstrates that they understand the issues and the implications of the vote that they're casting. I don't see why anybody who has no idea what the policies are of the party that they're voting for should be allowed to vote. How is their vote in any way meaningful? I think that a restriction like that would promote everybody, man and woman, to get more educated, more involved, and more politically aware. If they can't be bothered to educate themselves, well, that sucks for them, but then at least our democracy isn't clogged up with meaningless votes. But I digress. Let's return to the Red Pill extremists and what their motivation is for removing the right to vote from women. Is there anybody out there who denies the existence of genuine misogynists? People who have an emotional and irrational hatred of women. If we acknowledge that such men do exist, is it too much of a stretch to imagine that some of them might find their way into the manosphere? Is it too much of a stretch to imagine that some of these men might adopt labels like MGTOW and Red Pill in order to mask their true feelings, in order to mask their emotional and irrational hatred of women, and try and make their ideas sound more rational and logical? To clarify, I have never thought that the MGTOW or Red Pill ideologies are extreme. People who tell you that that's my perspective are misleading you. What I am talking about are extremist people pushing extremist ideas who adopt these labels in order to borrow their credibility, in order to boost the credibility of their perspective. It is not compassion for men that motivates Red Pill extremists, at least not compassion in any sense that's not deeply tribalistic. It's hatred for women. If it was really about compassion for men and helping men, why would there be this long list of insults to describe blue-pilled men? Simp, cuck, soy boy. Aren't these the men that they're trying to help? Aren't these the men that they supposedly feel compassion for? Compassion for men sounds like a noble ideal, and that's why these red pill extremists will hide behind that and claim that it's their motivation. But it's not. It's anger, hatred, and bitterness. Again, I'm not talking about the MGTOW or red pill communities as a whole. I'm talking about the extremists. It's no surprise that they want to take away fundamental human rights from women when you see that so much of their language is designed to specifically dehumanize women as individuals. I want to end with a quote from the author of the main video that I've been referencing. I think that it does a good job of demonstrating what I'm talking about. When men keep their pimp hand strong, women just obey and everything works and their fertility rate is high. When men let their pimp hand grow weak, the women start doing shit, and the government starts giving them rights, and everything goes to fucking hell. That's it. That is the beginning, middle, and end of the story. The only solution, like, I see these people, these tradcons on Twitter, people who I genuinely believe to know the answer, but they refuse to accept it. They're talking about, like, women need to decide to go back to the home and be stay-at-home mums, raise their kids and get married early. We just need to wait for women to decide. We need to present the argument. No. Women are children. You cannot convince a spoiled child to give up what they want. They don't think that far in advance. They're children. They're children. They're children. As you're probably aware, videos like this are not particularly popular because they go against red pill orthodoxy. But if you appreciate what I'm trying to do here, then please consider joining our community over at Patreon. We'd love to have you, and I'd love to have your support. Please leave a comment below letting us know what you think about this issue, and hit that like button if you enjoyed this debunking. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with the next debunking video. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you again next time.